Welcome back, Raider Nation. It's time for another edition of Silver and Black today, an Aussie Sports original podcast covering your Las Vegas Raiders. Scott Gulbransen, Moe Moten with you. Do us a favor, if you would, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. If you're watching us on video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and the notifications bell. All right, we're back in. Listen, yesterday, the big schedule drop. Big deal. I'm not a big schedule guy. Like, I get it. For those of you who are setting up travel, vacations, big deal. So total respect for that. Understand it. But the NFL is dribbling things out more and more, leaking things strategically. So a lot of it doesn't end up being a surprise. But we're going to get into that. We're going to talk a little bit about, did you see Mo? By the way, Moe Moten, my co-host. He is senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. Also, Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. You can catch him on his Bleacher Report live with Raider Talk Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to catch those. Also, you can follow him on x.com at Moe Moten, M-O-E-M-O-T-O-N. Mo, did you see, by the way, hello, buddy. Your Knicks are still in it. My Golden Knights are out of the playoffs. So my sports fandom now just turns to baseball. That's it. Disappointment, of course. But did you see this picture of Nicolas Cage and Christian Bale for the new John Madden movie that they're currently shooting down in Atlanta? Did you see the picture? What were your thoughts? It kind of set the internet on fire for Raider Nation yesterday.
No hardcore thoughts on it. I see a lot of Raider fans did not appreciate it when you posted it. I did see the responses to it, but I have no real.
There it is. I just flashed that. For those of you watching, for those of you listening, you won't see it, but you can check it out on my X feed. But Mo, listen, you know, Nick Cage, I had some people talking about how, he doesn't look anything like, well, listen, you're not going to look exactly like the person. Sometimes, character or actors can look like their characters significantly. But in this case, John Madden was an interesting looking dude. And so, but Nicolas Cage, like without a lot of prosthetic makeup and stuff, I think looks good. They nailed the hair, obviously. And then Christian Bale as Al Davis, at least we're just looking at one picture, of course, looks phenomenal. And he's a great actor. So I have no doubt that he'll nail the voice and everything. But kind of exciting to see this and have this drop so that Raider fans can kind of get a sense for what this movie might look like.
Again, a lot of Raider fans, from my point of view, didn't really appreciate it. So I don't know how many of them.
Nobody's ever happy.
I mean, a lot of them were kind of, I don't like. I think a lot of Raider fans, when you see remakes and deep fakes of Al Davis, it kind of rubs Raider fans the wrong way. But hey, I'm willing to give the film the flick a chance.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like, and of course, we'll see how the movie is. I mean, two good actors. The director's had some big flops, so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that was one story out. Of course, the big story, Mo, that everybody's talking about, of course, the NFL schedule drop yesterday. Not a lot of surprises. I think that there's a couple things. We're going to go through that a little bit. We'll give just an initial kind of thoughts on. I'll talk a little bit about win-loss here, Mo, but I'm not going to go in depth on it because I need to really think through it and see what's going on with the schedule, the timing, and all that stuff. But I think the national games, people were concerned, and I'm showing the schedule now, and the Raiders open up on the road at New England, which is very, very special, so that they can, so that all of you can want to beat Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator there. You remember him? September 7th, of course, the kickoff of the season. And then the Raiders did have two primetime games. They have a Monday night game and a Thursday night game. And they could have more depending. There's the set week 17 and 18 are flex weeks or TBD on timing. But November 17th, Monday Night Football against the Cowboys at home.
Scott.
Right. And then,
three primetime games.
Three primetime games.
Remember, you got the Monday Night Football game against the Chargers.
That's right. The Charger game. Sorry, I missed the second one. See, that's what happens when you've had a long week, and Mo has obviously been doubling up on his avocado smoothies. So he gets the old guy here to get it right. So yeah, so you have the Charger game, and then you have, of course, as I mentioned, the Cowboy game And the Giant game, right, is going to be a primetime game. We just don't know exactly when, if I have that correct. So,
Yeah,
Mo, a lot of fans were worried that they might, excuse me, the Denver game. That's a Thursday night on Amazon, right? So you look at this, 2 Monday nights and a Thursday night. I think that's pretty good for a team that won just 4 games last year.
yeah, I was gonna say that. I actually did a stream on Tuesday um about this. How many primetime games do you think the Raiders gonna get? And I said 3 or 4, simply because of the upgrade at quarterback with Geno Smith. I specifically said, you can rewind the tape on this. You have to have the Jim Harbaugh Pete Carroll rivalry on TV. And
Very
sure
good
enough,
point.
they put that on early. And I also said that because of the attraction that the Dallas Cowboys get, that is the game most likely to get prime time treatment for the Raiders because of the Cowboys and their brand. And a lot of some fans are like, well, the Cowboys have been mediocre. And I said, well, hold on, wait a minute. Before last year, and when Dak Prescott got hurt, the Cowboys won 12 games 3 straight years in a
3
row.
straight years. Right.
They've been a pretty good football team. And when you have the intrigue of the Cowboys, assuming Dak Prescott is healthy, it is a team that still has a lot of appeal. So I felt like the Cowboys game would be prime time. Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll rivalry would be showcased, and it was. And of course, you're going to get one primetime game against another one of your division rivals. And they have that on Thursday against the Denver Broncos, which is always a fun, intriguing matchup between Raider fans and Denver Broncos fans. So they got about what I expected them to get. You're not going to get 4 or 5 primetime games for a team that won 4 games
No.
last year.
And I had one of our listeners, it was weeks ago, say, "Hey, how many primetime games do you think the Raiders are going to get?" And I said, "Just have the expectation of 0." Because if it's over that, I didn't think it would be 0 for your point, which is Pete Carroll's a big draw, and of course the
Yeah,
Harbaugh thing, like you said, the Geno Smith thing, and the Raiders are always a story, and so I think that they were going to get 1 or 2. I thought so. The third one to me was a bonus. So, and it's a division thing, and I think obviously you have 2 Super Bowl winning coaches when you look at the Denver matchup again on a Thursday night. So to me that was all it made perfect sense in seeing it. But we look at the rest of the schedule. Of course, they open up the season, as I said, against the Patriots, and then of course the Chargers. They always get the Chargers, it seems, early in the season. So the second week 2, they're going to be on Monday Night Football. Then they get a tough game versus Washington. Then you got Chicago, Indy, and Tennessee in a row, right? 3 games against teams that struggled last year, of course. All with going to have new quarterbacks, except for Chicago, of course, who has Caleb Williams coming back in year 2. Then they get a bye. They get a week 8 bye. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Mo, because I did not research it and I'm just going off of memory. I think that's the earliest buy the Raiders have had in a while. Or I should say the best buy they've had in a while, meaning towards the middle of the schedule.
yeah, I would say best buy because I think recently they had a week 6 bye, which is
Week 6, right.
relatively
You're right.
early.
Yep.
But I wanted the Raiders to have either a buy early or in the middle of the season because they're going to have a lot of young players, and
Mhm.
it allows an early buy allows them to fix some things early in the season with an extra week off versus going through 11, 12 weeks. Not that you can't correct mistakes in between games, but that extra week gives you extra time to look over things and potentially change things if you need to. So I prefer that the Raiders had this year with some young pieces an early buy or a buy in the middle of the season, and they got that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And then you have after that, you have an interesting run, right? You have after the bye, you have Jacksonville, then you have Denver again on that Thursday night. You have those two national games, and sort of you don't really call it a mini bye, but between the you get 11 days between Denver and uh, Dallas because of the Monday night, right? So they get that extra time, the Friday, Saturday, and then the month Sunday, clearly on the next week. So you get that, but you have Jacksonville, who I don't know, man. Jacksonville, as bad as they were last year, I think they could be better improved, especially if Trevor Lawrence reaches his full potential. But you have Jacksonville, Denver, Dallas, and then you get Cleveland, and who knows with Cleveland, usually a mess. But this stretch will be, I think that 3 game stretch Then you get Cleveland. Then you get Chargers, Broncos, and Eagles, right? And the stretch run for the Raiders going into past Thanksgiving into Christmas time, pre-Christmas, and to end the season. Kind of a mixed bag there, but tough because you have division rivals in the Chargers, Broncos, November 30th, December 7th. Then you get the Super Bowl champion Eagles, then a very good, I think, and a team that'll rebound, the Houston Texans, then the Giants, and who knows, and then you close out the season with the Chiefs. So when you look at this, Mo, it seems to me that the Raiders, with a couple exceptions, really, I think getting off to a strong start and putting up wins earlier in the season is going to be imperative for them.
And I think they can. If you can just put the schedule up really quick, Scott,
Yeah.
just so I have the visual. But you're looking at, I think it's favorable in the first half of the season. And I say this because the
Mhm.
Patriot game, Drake May is still a young quarterback, and the
Right.
Patriots have a lot of new parts. I know Josh McDaniels is back there for like his third time. I get that, but it's a new regime. As the Raiders have some new coaches too, but I think the Raiders have the advantage in that one simply because Geno Smith, while he is in the new offense with a new team, he's way more experienced than Drake May. So I think it's a benefit to the Raiders to have the Patriots. Even though I would like to have seen the Raiders open the season with a home game, they haven't opened the season with a home game since 2021. If you remember that Baltimore Ravens Monday Night Football game that the
Yep.
Raiders won, that's the last time they've had a home opener. But
Yep.
I'll accept the Patriots game because I think it's favorable to the Raiders. Also, if you're looking at weeks 5 and 6, I think that's a point where they can, string together consecutive wins against two
Mhm.
teams who I think are only going to win 5 games or fewer. We talked about the bye. The tough stretch is starting week 13.
Yes.
Starting week 13, that's when we're going to find out if the Raiders are a contending playoff team or just outside of the playoff picture. You
Yeah.
mentioned division rivals, the Eagles, the reigning champions, the Texans, who have been a perennial playoff contender. We'll see what the Giants are in the end with the Chiefs.
Not only that, Mo, but you look over those last 8 weeks. To me, that's a gauntlet because 5 of the last 8 weeks you're on the road, okay? Dallas, Cleveland, Denver, New York, and Kansas City. And Dallas is indoors, everybody else is outside, and it's cold. Now, I'm not saying that, who knows, different teams. I don't think dome teams necessarily. There was stats years ago about all this stuff, but I just think that going down the stretch when injuries become even more important, all this kind of stuff, and you go out in the cold in a stretch where you're trying to make a playoff run, because if the Raiders, I don't care if you think the Raiders are going to win 5 games, 8 games, 9 games, they're going to be in that area where they're fighting to get a wild card spot. I think that's the upside here. And if that's the case, 5 of the last 8 weeks on the road against some of the teams you got to play as well, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, keep in mind it's flipped the other way. If you just pull up the schedule really
Yeah.
quick, that Dallas game is a home game.
I'm
So
sorry. Excuse me.
yeah,
I got it
the
all wrong.
other.
See,
It's
folks,
it's flipped the other way. They're ending at home with
they're
two
ending at
consecutive games.
home. Excuse me.
But it is no, but it is still a tough road. You look at Denver making the. We'll start with the Jacksonville. Actually, we'll go back to the Chiefs game. Though I think the Raiders can win that Chiefs game. They played the Chiefs close at home with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. They should be able to pull out a win with Geno Smith. I know that's blasphemy for a lot of people, but the Chiefs and the Raiders have actually been very competitive at Arrowhead. Then, like you, Scott, I agree with you. Jacksonville is going to be the surprise team of the season. I'm
Yeah.
going to go on record with that. It's on my Bleacher Report win-loss projections. I think Jacksonville is going to be a good team. If you remember back in the offseason, I liked Liam Cohen as the head coaching candidate. The way he left Tampa Bay for Jacksonville, of course, not what I would have done, but it doesn't take away from him being a good coach at our play caller. If he can do what he did with Baker Mayfield with Trevor Lawrence, now they got Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter at wide receiver. Jacksonville, I think, is going to be the surprise team.
Mm.
I actually have the Jacksonville Jaguars winning their division. Then
Wow.
again, we talked about Denver Broncos on Thursday Night Football. They had, as we said, they had the reigning champions in there. They got the Chargers again. They got Houston, who's been a division winner. So really, after week 7, it starts to get tough, and that's why I said the first 6 weeks of the season. If the Raiders are going to make the playoffs, the first weeks of the season, I want to see them go 4-2 because it's going to get really hard after that.
Yeah, and again, this is a great example of why you should get more sleep. Me rereading the schedule or misreading the schedule. And no, I'm not going to edit it out. So, hey, it just is what it is. So thank you, Mo. That's twice you've corrected me today. So I appreciate that, buddy. See, that's why we're here for each other.
Yeah.
You got to do it. It's been that kind of week. But yeah, so I mean, listen, I think again, I'm going to sit down with the schedule, go over it, look at some of the things, and we'll see what happens as we get into camp. But right now, to me, optimistically, I look at this and think 7 wins. And I know I've seen a lot of projections around 6 wins so far. It's very early. The schedule just came out yesterday. And some of you might get mad at 7. Oh, 7 win, only 3 wins. Well, 3 wins more than last year when you didn't have a quarterback and you have a very young team and you have a tough couple stretches. That's where I'm starting, right, Mo? I mean, I'm not going to call it my floor. I think floor might be 6. But when you look at this, off the top of your head, again, I know because you like to analyze it more as I do. What are you thinking here with the Raiders as far as wins? I'm not there yet to think that they're going to be, because I think you got to have, in a bad year, 9 wins to be in the playoff hunt. In most years, 10 is the minimum. And I just don't see them in the 9-10 win situation right now.
Well, Scott, since I did a whole Bleacher Report live on this, so I had to do my win-loss predictions Wednesday. So that's why
So you're telling me to go watch it? Is that what you're telling me?
But no, I'm not going off the top of my head. I'm telling you, I think it's going to be 7 wins, and that's why I was kind of surprised. We actually agree. We didn't plan that. We didn't talk before the show, before we went on air. I had my show on Bleacher Report on Wednesday night where I had to get my win-loss predictions. I went through every game, win or loss. Of course, some fans didn't like it, but I have the Raiders going 7-10, and just overview reasons why. Yes, there is a significant upgrade in the coaching staff, Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Yes, there's a significant upgrade at quarterback. But one thing there are a couple of things that I don't like what I see out of the Raiders roster right now. They don't have a linebacker who I feel can cover well in the shallow zones. And I worry about that their linebackers are going to be a liability on third downs, specifically passing downs. I think the Raiders are going to struggle against pass catching tight ends and teams that attack the middle of the field because of their linebacker core. Isaiah Polamalu is stepping up. We hope he plays well, but he is going to be a first-time full-time starter. The other thing that worries me is their cornerback room. I think there's an over-reliance that, Pete Carroll will just coach the cornerback room and it'll be okay. He's not King Midas, people. Like every cornerback he touches isn't going to turn to a Pro Bowl or a pro. I know a lot of people want to bring up Reek Woolen, but what about the guys like Byron Maxwell who flamed out?
Good one.
Lane, who was over there, Jeremy Lane, who's over there in Seattle. Some of his projects didn't work out or had maybe one good year. So it's not like every cornerback that Pete Carroll's coach has been great. You're hoping for that. You're hoping that there's a development and then the cornerback room holds up, but the cornerback is still a major concern for me. It's my 1B concern behind linebacker. And I think the Raiders defense against some of these prolific, potentially explosive passing attacks, I think they're going to struggle in some of those matchups, especially if you have 2 good wide receivers. I mentioned the Jacksonville Jaguars having Brian Thomas. We'll see what Travis Hunter looks like. But even the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, the Raiders are going to see some offenses that can put up a lot of points, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on Geno Smith to run up the score and go drive for drive. So I think the defense, for me, is a worry on the back 7. Their defensive line should be pretty good.
Yeah.
We're finally potentially going to get to see Malcolm Koonce, Christian Wilkins, and Max Crosby on the field at the same time, but you still got to be able to cover on the back end.
Exactly. And the other thing I'll point out too is just that the AFC West has gotten better. Now, again, the Chargers are getting all this. Our brethren in the national media are crowning them again, which is just crazy that this happens every year for the last 15 years and they never live up to the hype. So I agree with fans on that, even looking at it objectively. But the Chargers will be better. The Broncos should be better. We'll see how Nick's performs in his second year. That's the big question mark. But this Raiders defense is going to have to face in division games alone some really tough battles. And I think your point about linebackers there and about that defensive backfield and how it's going to shake out is a big deal in the division. So there's a possibility. I'm not saying it. Don't tell me that I'm being overly negative, but the Raiders whiffed in the division last year. It's a possibility they could this year again too. Nothing crazy things can happen, but Denver, I think again is the one I would look at. But again, they've improved as well.
So we differ a little bit here. Here's my perspective on the Raiders' rivals in the division. I think Denver is a little, I don't want to say overrated. I
Oh, I
think
do.
the perception of Denver is a little inflated.
Sure.
I looked at their schedule last year. They beat one team, they beat two teams with winning records. And one of those teams was the Kansas City Chiefs, who rested their starters in the last week of the season.
Right.
So they had just as many impressive wins as the Raiders. The Raiders beat the Ravens last year, early in week 2, if you remember. The Denver Broncos beat Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. The Denver Broncos and Raiders had the same number of impressive wins last
Yeah.
year. I'm not
Good
convinced.
wins.
I'm not saying Bo Nix wasn't good. I'm just not convinced that Denver is going to take this step up that a lot of people think they're going to take. I have my questions about RJ Harvey. Is he going to take over the backfield? Or is he just going to be part of a committee? Pat
Right.
Bryant, the wide receiver they drafted in the 3rd round. I wouldn't have drafted him in that spot. Maybe Sean Payton says he sees Marcus Colston in him. Maybe he is. I just
Yeah.
don't think Denver is going to take the step up that a lot of people think they are. I do think, really quick, Scott.
Yeah.
I do think the Chargers, though, it's going to shock a lot of people. I think the Chargers are going to win a division with 13 wins.
Wow.
Simple because, and I know people I know people are going to run the narrative. The Chargers are always the off-season darlings. Everyone thinks they're always going to do well, and they don't. This is a different Chargers team. This isn't the Brandon Staley Chargers. This isn't the Anthony Lynn Chargers. Jim Harbaugh has a very good track record. You're not talking about the Chargers from 5 years ago. People came at me with the same narrative last year when I said the Chargers would win 10 games. People said, well, the Chargers always expected to win 10 games. They won 10 games. It's the Jim Harbaugh era is going to be different than what
There's
you
Mo.
saw from the Chargers in previous years. I'm just saying that just like
Yeah.
Raider fans get tired of the same old narratives about their team, it applies across the board if we're being objective. The Chiefs, I think, are going to come back. The Chiefs went 15-2 last year. They're due for regression. They were 11-0 in one-score games last year. There's no way, and you know what? They win that many one-score games this year.
That's a good point.
They're going to lose some of those games. Travis Kelce's getting older. We saw that in the playoffs last year. Disappeared in the AFC Championship game. Disappeared in the Super Bowl. He is not going to terrorize the Raiders defense as he once did in his prime. I think the Chiefs are going to win maybe 11 games. But they're going to definitely come back from last year. They're not going to be as dominant. The Chargers, I think, are going to win the AFC West this year.
Interesting. We'll have lots of time to talk about that. It's going to be fun. But all right. Well, there you go. The schedule, and we'll get into more. Call us, tell us what you think. Also, let us know if you're traveling the games and which ones you're going to. So that'll be interesting to see what matchups people are interested in going to, and what cities they're interested in going to. Anyway, we're gonna take our first break, and guess what? When we come back, our good friend and colleague here from Odyssey, that is Mr. Brian Baldinger Baldy, who you can catch on the NFL Network as well. Baldy's going to come down. He's going to give us his breakdown of the Raiders draft, free agency, what they did in free agency, and what he likes about this team, what he's concerned with about this team. We're going to ask him all kinds of questions about what to expect from the 2025 Raiders. So don't go anywhere. Brian Baldinger coming up next here on Silver and Black Today. You're with Scott and Mo. Hang in there. We're coming right back. Welcome back. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Joining us now, our colleague here from Odyssey. Also, you catch him all the time on the NFL Network. That, of course, is Brian Baldinger. He's here to talk about the Raiders, what they've done in the offseason, the draft so far, free agency so far, and what that means for the upcoming season. Baldy, you look at this Raiders team, and one of the things that you've said for the last year and a half, every time we've talked to you, is it's about the quarterback. We talked about them perhaps drafting a quarterback. That didn't happen, but they go out after Pete Carroll and John Spytek come into this organization. They go out and they get Geno Smith. When you look at Geno Smith along with Pete Carroll and what they're doing there, how do you feel about this upgrade and what it might mean for this Raiders team?
Well, it's an upgrade. There's no question. I mean, Geno's had some good years with Seattle the last 3 years, winning records, competed really well, largely healthy over that period of time, something Raider quarterbacks have had a hard time doing. This is Chip Kelly's offense, and Chip, I've known Chip since, well, since his Oregon days. And, he, when he was in Philadelphia his first year, Shady McCoy led the league in rushing, won the rushing title. I mean, he wants to run the ball, and they got Ashton Gentry, and that's going to help. I mean, I'm only mentioning these things because all those things are going to help Geno Smith. And so, I think he knows where to go with the ball. He's smart. He's a veteran guy. He watched a long time in his business when he wasn't starting during different stretches of his career. And I think he's grown up a lot. I think he matured a lot from his days with the Jets and other stops along the league. And Giants, I mean, he was fairly immature, but I think he's matured a lot. He played this offense when he was at West Virginia for Daniel Holgorsen. I mean, it was basically the same offense. It was an air raid, kind of an air raid type of scheme. And, you're going to attack vertically down the field, all those kind of things. You're going to play with tempo. Yeah, some of these things he's done early in his, in college and throughout his career. So I think he's going to adjust real well to what they want to do.
So, Baldy, speaking about helping the quarterback, we'll talk offensive line. You being a former offensive lineman, I like to get you on these offensive line questions. Raiders draft back-to-back offensive linemen, Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, Charles Grant out of William and Mary. There's always a lot of talk about, is this guy a tackle or a guard? And Caleb Rogers played a lot of right tackle at Texas Tech. Pete Carroll says he's going to play at the inside spots. There were questions about DJ Glaze, who's going to his second year. Is he a tackle or guard? From your experience in just playing the game, what makes a tackle, a guard, even a center? Because we hear a lot about arm length, but we know it's not all just about arm length because Will Campbell's going to play left tackle in New England.
Some of it is the measurables, Mo. Some of it is that. Some of it is, it's weird. Like some guys know how to just naturally drop an anchor and stop a bull rush, and some guys never do it, never learn it, never know how to do it. And it's not about really size. Tackles generally have more length. They got to cover more ground. You want guys that have maybe a squattier build inside going up against, the 320 and 330-pound defensive tackles that they now face, and you want to be able to stop that charge. There's not one thing that makes it a guard, or a tackle, Zach Martin was a great guard at Notre Dame. He's a Hall of Fame right guard for the Dallas Cowboys. Quentin Nelson was a great left tackle at Notre Dame. He's been an all-pro left guard. And both those guys, I mean, they've in past years, they've thought about moving Quentin Nelson to tackle. And then you kind of, maybe you weaken two positions by strengthening one. Some of that stuff comes into play. Some of it is, can we get our best five guys on the field, Mo? Who's our best five? Let's figure out a way to get them on the field. Some of it is that. So every situation I feel is different. I played both. I played both guard and tackle and center. But I was a utility guy, so that was like my strength is I could, go from guard to tackle during the game. And, I can handle the mental part of it okay. But, I was better inside than I was outside. I didn't have some of the arm length and some of just the size that you need out there. Because, if you're going up against Jared Verse right now, you're going up in, against Khalil Mack in your division, and he decides to go to power on you, you better figure out a way to stop that rush of his because he's a powerful guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Baldy, because, okay, the Raiders' offensive line, clearly not the offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of our listeners think that the Raiders' offensive line is terrible. When you look at it and you see, I mean, you have to build over time. You have to have consistency. You have to have depth. Where would you put this offensive line, knowing what they have going into camp come in July?
I think they're okay. I mean, we got to figure out if DJ Glaze is your starter.
Right.
I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson, played both guard and tackle last year, or center and guard last year. He's the center, though. So he's, they've moved on, and he's the center, and that's what they drafted him to be. So now, I always think the strength of your offensive line starts with your center. And that is, he's got to work with both guards. Okay. He's got to handle the nose tackles and all of the protections. You're only going to be as strong as your center. Your center is average or weak. I don't care what your tackles or guards look like. You're going to be weak in the middle where you got to be the strongest. Geno Smith is mobile and can move, but he wants to stay in the pocket. You got to keep the pocket flat and you got to keep it wide. So I'm a big believer in Colton and what he can do. And Dylan has proven that he can be a good player in this league. But they got to get five. They got to get five guys. I mean, look, outside of Jordan Mailata missing a couple games for the Eagles last year, they started the same 5 guys, every game. And so Lane Johnson didn't miss games. And so you really you want to get continuity there as quickly as you can. You want to get your best 5 in there. But I don't think they're anywhere near where the Eagles are. They don't have that. I mean, Mekhi Becton was all world last year. And nobody saw that coming. Nobody thought he could do it, but he did it. And he got a good, nice contract with the Chargers. But look at the Chargers. I mean, look at the guys, teams in your own division. Chiefs got a blind spot at left tackle. They keep drafting him. The Chargers keep drafting linemen and keep trying to upgrade. And now Mekhi Becton is in there because the right guard was terrible last year. Denver, it looks like they've got some stability there, but just in your own division, there's been a lot of instability at the offensive line position.
Yeah, let's switch to the defensive side, Baldy, for the rest of the time we have with you. Of course, the Raiders up front on defense, Max Crosby. I don't have to tell you about Max Crosby. You give us all the info we need about Max Crosby, and we have eyes, so we know how good Max is. And then you have Tyree Wilson, who we're still waiting for him to reach some of that potential of being a first-round draft pick. But this draft, they drafted one of my favorite all-time names of all time at defensive tackle, Tonka Hemingway, and then J.J. Pegues. When you look at that Raiders defensive front, is that looking like the strength of that defense again coming into the 25 season?
Well, I mean, Max, it would be good to see, if you can get, Christian Wilkins get you a full year.
Yeah.
Butler is solid. Honestly, like how much longer are you going to wait on Tyree? Because now it's year 3. There's no injuries. He played, he showed flashes last year, but that's the 6th pick in the draft. Like you can't miss in those guys. If he can come on, I mean, they got Malcolm back. He's a rusher. I don't know if he's an every down player. So I think they've got some depth there right now, but I don't know if it's a strength yet. I don't know if they can just take over games and with a rotation. I like to actually, I've talked to Max about this. I like him not to have to play at 100% of the snaps. I think if he dropped down into 85 to 90%, he'd be better and he could get through 17 games. He's been nicked up 2 years in a row. He's playing too many snaps, but I don't blame him. Like there's nothing better that he could put in there, but I'd like to see a better rotation. All these teams right now that are winning, including the Eagles, they're rotating 7 and 8 guys. It's a 17-game season. You want to play in the postseason. So you got to figure on an 18-game season now, you need to be 7 or 8 deep. Now, they lost Wilkins last year, and that was unfortunate. And they got some good play out of a couple other guys, but, he's a good player. They need him to be on the field for 17 games right now. But I like you talk about your front 4, which is fine, and I think it's good. But you want to be 7 or 8 deep. And you want to be able to rotate those guys through without dropping off. When the 49ers were going to Super Bowls and going to championship games, they were 8 deep. Last year, they were terrible. And they completely fell off the map. So, they went out and drafted 3 defensive linemen. I like Pegues from Mississippi. Like, he looks like, he might even play a little fullback for you, but he looks like a guy that's pretty stout at the point of attack. It takes typically these rookies a year to figure things out. So we'll see how quickly they can kind of adjust here and get on the field and maybe help that rotation.
So, Baldy, speaking of depth and rotations, I feel like the Raiders are a little light at linebacker. Now, they brought in Devin White, really good at Tampa Bay, had a Pro Bowl year, Super Bowl winning team, fell off the map a bit, has fallen into a rotational role. They bring in a Landon Roberts, former Pittsburgh Steeler. Questions about those guys in coverage. The Raiders feel like they have been looking for that linebacker to stick around for more than 2-3 years. They haven't had that, and I don't think they have that right now to have 2 Band-Aids at that position. My concern is that the linebacker spot, is it a thing now where the linebacker position is just devalued by some teams? Like you can't have but so many Fred Warners and Roquan Smiths to go around. Are the Raiders just planning to drop one of their safeties to be a hybrid guy? Maybe Jeremy Chin could play a little linebacker and safety. Is that enough for the Raiders defense behind their defensive line?
Well, look, Chin has played that role before, Mo, and he's good at it. The closer he is to the line of scrimmage, I think the better he is. But, these teams are playing dime linebackers. You just run out of it. We know what Seattle and the Chargers want to do. They want to pound you. And so good luck. playing, a 215, 220-pound safety in there at that spot. It's going to be a problem. The teams that won last year, Philadelphia, Detroit, Baltimore, even Buffalo, I mean, they all ran it more than they threw it. Washington is up there like that. I mean, that's the trend in this league right now. You better have good linebackers. I mean, to your point, Mo, Philadelphia never valued linebackers until they found Zach. Zach last year and Zach Vaughn, and he should have been the defensive MVP of this league the way he played. And they rewarded him with a big contract, and then they drafted John Campbell. Like sometimes you just recognize, and some of it is Vic Fangio. He just believes in having great linebackers, but I don't think you can hide them, Mo. Like Devin White was out of this league. He was in Philly. He bounced around. He got bounced out of Tampa. Like he can flat out run and he can hit. I'll give him that. But he gets lost in coverage. It's been an issue. You can't hide from it. Maybe he's learned, but he came to Philly last year. He couldn't get on the field, and they cut him. So, and they thought that was going to be a good landing spot for him. They gave him a great opportunity. But he couldn't do that. Tampa moved on from him. I got to see it. I don't want to tell somebody he can't do anything or he's not good at something until they prove me wrong. But it's been an issue for him right now.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Baldy, man, I appreciate, as always, the insights and the time. You're so generous with that, and we appreciate it very much. Make sure you check out Baldy on X at Baldy NFL. Of course, his breakdowns, all the links to everything to look at from Brian Baldinger is listed below, so make sure you do that. Baldy, we'll talk to you next time, my friend. Thank you so much.
You got it, guys. Take care, man.
Take care. All right. We're going to step aside for our final break here on Silver and Black today. When we come back, we're taking your phone calls. Take care. Hold on. Welcome back. Silver and Black today. Hope you enjoyed our conversation with Baldy. Man, it's always fun to have him on, Mo, because first of all, he tells it like it is, whether you want to hear it or not. And I always find that he's very, especially as a former player, he's so objective about things. Now, he loves Max Crosby. We know that. And he obviously mentioned Max and all that. But I just think that he does such a great job. And he makes it so simple that even people who are casual football fans really understand it.
And that's why I like to ask him about the offensive line. Obviously, he played all three positions across
the
line. But I think the offensive line is one of the position groups that's misunderstood because there aren't any glaring stats to look at outside of sacks and pressures allowed. And even that, how do you calculate a pressure? And different analytical sites have different pressure numbers. But having played the position, I think Baldy gives great insight on the offensive line. That's why I had to sneak in an offensive line question.
Yeah, no, great stuff there about Gentry, about obviously the quarterback position and the upgrade there and so on. Because remember, as I mentioned in the interview, Baldy kept telling us quarterback the last year and a half. So the Raiders did something about it. So interesting comments there too. All right, now it's time, one of our favorite times of the show, and that's to get to your calls. Now, last week we had to cut some of those short, and I told you we had Yandog, we had Tarek, our buddy from Chicago. They were going to be first up, and they are. So they called in, they left us calls. So we're going to get to those. And again, don't forget to rate and review the show. Please subscribe wherever you get your audio. Appreciate that very much. But we're going to get to your calls right now. So first up is, of course, rabid Raider fan, our good buddy who calls us from all over the country, but he's still back home in Chicago. And here is Tarek with the first call of the day.
Scott and Mo, what's going on? This is Tarek checking in with you guys from Chicago. Just want to talk a little bit Raiders. Cool to see the vibe at rookie camp. Obviously, Gentry looks every bit the part. You can't wait to see what that guy looks like in training camp and once the season actually gets started. Super excited about Jack Vetch. He's given me Puka and Cooper Kupp type vibes. He looks bigger than his 6'1". And I think he's going to make an immediate impact as a rookie. He just got so much heart and so much drive and determination. It's a very inspiring story. I can't wait to see what he does as a rookie as well. And I can't wait to see the veterans join in with the rookies. There just seems to be such a different vibe at camp. And when you have competent, experienced head coaching and a great coaching staff, then I just think it's going to come all together for the Raiders. And again, my previous call, I made a bold prediction that the Raiders are going to contend for at least second place in the AFC West, and I stand firmly on it. Exciting that the schedule release is going to be tomorrow. I'm glad that the Raiders do not have any international games. I know we play the NFC East, the NFC North, amongst other competitors. Mo, shout out to the Knicks. We're going up 3-1 on Boston. They're about to put that on ice. And I just want to close out by just kind of water under the bridge, but a final thing about Derek Carr's retirement. I was always a big fan of Derek Carr. And I thought, throughout all the difficult times in with the Raiders, I thought he was a consummate professional. He always gave it 110%. He was great in the locker room. He's great in the community. And I will always say that I think the Raiders' dysfunction ruined his career. We're talking about a guy who had 4 head coaches in his first 5 years in the league. And what does that mean? Different offensive coordinators, different playbooks. He never had the luxury of a very good, defense opposite the offensive side of the ball to help him. He never really had any quality wide receivers. The one time he did have 2 quality receivers were Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree in 2016. That year they went 12-4, and Carr was 3rd in the league in MVP voting. And he never really had a running game until his last few years with the Raiders when they got Josh Jacobs. So bittersweet to see Carr retire. All the best to him in retirement. Looking forward to your guys' next show. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Go Raiders. Bye-bye.
All right, there's Tarek. And a couple things there, Mo. Number one, he talked about liking Jack Vesh a lot and that he looks, quote unquote, looks bigger than his 6'1" frame. And then he talked about Derek Carr, so we'll get to that in a second. But Vesh, what's interesting about Vesh, too, is you're starting to see, and Mo, tell me if I'm wrong, because you cover the whole league. With him and where he'll play and all that stuff, I think you're starting, number one, I think his size, he plays, if you want to call it, plays big. But I think you're starting to see less and less difference between outside guys and slot guys now. You're starting to see those positions, because you look at, and there are still guys who are clearly focused slot receivers. But the way the offenses are changing and the way the talent is changing, do you see Vesh as a guy who can go that way too?
Absolutely, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, he started off as a slot guy.
Right.
At LSU, and then transferred to TCU recently, was on the boundary. And I talked about a lot of this when when the Raiders first drafted him in the 2nd round, that he's going to be your inside-outside guy, and he kind of fits into that Jacoby Myers role, where Jacoby Myers can play on the outside and the inside. Remember Myers, when he was with the Patriots, played in the slot. Got to the Raiders, Devontae Adams, Scott, the whole story. Jacoby Myers has to be your wide receiver 1 and was able to play outside. So I think that's just what Chip Kelly is looking for in his receivers. And Trey Tucker, has that versatility as well. He was a slot guy at Cincinnati. The Raiders have mostly used him on the boundary. So their wide receivers are interchangeable right now. And then you sprinkle in Dante Thornton, who can stretch the field. And you have a lot of good ingredients in that wide receiver room. And there's a lot of potential there. And I want to see how far Chip Kelly can take that wide receiver room. But Jack Vesh, I think, is pro ready. I think he has the hands to be on the field immediately week 1, and you can rely on him to move the chains, but not only move the chains, but to be a critical part of that offense on all 3 downs.
Nice. And then about Derek Carr, he was thankful for Derek Carr, obviously, is what Tarek had talked about in the call, and said that, he, for all that he did, he was in bad situations. And so not all his fault. And listen, we've always said that. I've never said Derek Carr was 100% responsible for how the Raiders played, because that's not how football works. But I think that Raider fans now, even those that were not big fans of Derek Carr or didn't feel like Derek Carr was the answer towards the end of his stay in Las Vegas with the Raiders, can still show appreciation. Now he's not playing for anybody else. He's retired. He's moved on with his life and what he's going to do there with his family and whatnot. And so, I think now you can appreciate Derek Carr and what he did for the Raider organization. And he meant a lot for this organization. If you think about it, Mo, it's easy to look at the lack of success in the playoffs and all that stuff. Not all his fault again, but you can look back now and appreciate Derek Carr for the human being that he is, and for, I think, what he brought to that team during those tumultuous periods, multiple tumultuous periods, that he was a Raider.
I remember after the Derek Carr announcement came through, was it Sunday? And all I did was say, Raiders salute, thankful for Derek Carr and the good times that he had as a Raider. Because I said, while he was in uniform, when Derek Carr suited up, you knew he cared, about the franchise. He cared about wearing that C on his jersey and wearing the silver and black. And that's all I was saying I was thankful for. Droves of people, of course, came out with stats. Oh, what about his red zone? Oh, what about his fumbling? What about the stats? No quarterback, no playoff wins, no losing record, all this stuff, people defending him. And I was just like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just saying thank you to Derek Carr. It wasn't to say he's a top 12 quarterback. It wasn't to say he was a bottom 15 quarterback. It was saying thank you, Derek Carr, for helping the Raiders be competitive and giving fans a reason to believe that the Raiders could go to the playoffs and win some games. Because let me tell you, while the hindsight is 2020, while Derek Carr was in his 2016 season, and we all know what happened at the end of that year when he got hurt, there was a period of time where people believe the Raiders can get to the playoffs and win some games with Derek Carr, with the right supporting cast. So to Derek's point, there were times, yes, when Derek Carr failed the Raiders with his play. He wasn't a flawless quarterback. And there were times where the Raiders failed him. We talk all the time about how the Raiders bungled the top of their draft, right? Flushing first-round picks down the toilet. Can you imagine what the team would look like around Derek Carr had the Raiders done better with their draft classes? And in some cases, free agency. John Gruden had some wonky free agent pickups, overpaid for some guys that didn't pan out. Can you imagine if the Raiders had hit on an offseason where they had a good draft class and a good free agent group around Derek Carr? So all the blame doesn't go to Derek Carr. All the blame doesn't go into the organization. It's usually a little bit of both. It didn't work out the way a lot of fans didn't wanted to see better results. Obviously, a playoff win. It didn't happen, but I'm still thankful for the times that Carr put on the jersey for 9 years and gave it his all.
Absolutely. All right. Now we're moving on to Yan Dog. Of course, Tarek. Then you're going to have Yan Dog, his buddy. So here we go.
Scott, Mo, this is Yan Dog. Haven't talked to you guys in about 2-3 weeks, and I'm hoping I get on your show this week. I just want to tell you that to start off with, it was a very emotional situation with me when they got Vesh because of what happened to his brother, and I actually was emotional. And I'm usually not emotional because I'm an ex-correction officer for 25 years. And that really, really made me happy to see that kid to get on the team. And I'm really excited to watch the Raiders play this year because I think they're doing magnificent with getting all these players. And I love the combination of Carroll and Spytek. Also, I'm glad we got that running back. The only thing that I found out is that Wilkerson, with this kind of injury he's got. I mean, we paid him all this money, and I'm hoping that he would be a big help on the defense. But I don't know what to say about that. What the story is on that. Maybe you guys know more about his injury. But besides that, I'm just glad and I'm happy and I can't wait. I'm excited like a little kid, and I'm 67 years old, and I feel like a little kid getting ready for the season. And I think the Raiders are going to, my prediction, I think they could get 10 or 11 wins. 11-6 would be great. But besides that, I'm happy to be on the show. I think you guys are terrific, and that's about it. And hopefully we'll talk soon again. Okay, over and out. Yeah, dog.
There you go, Yan Dog. The Vesh situation with his brother and the terrorist attack. I mean, just a terrible family tragedy, terrible tragedy for the country, obviously. But Yan Dog, I don't blame you, man. And I'm glad people are excited. I think that there is a renewed, and while some people are skeptical, and I totally get it, I do feel that people have an understanding, and there's just much more of a clear direction and a feeling that this direction, while it might not change and fix everything overnight, Mo, it will lead to better outcomes later on.
So I want to say this now in mid-May, because I know we're at a time where hope is at an all-time high, optimism is at an all-time high. If the Raiders win 3 to 4 more games than they won last year, progress is better than no progress, right?
Right.
I think people feel like, okay, if their team gets better, it's got to be a playoff jump. There are teams that improve but don't necessarily make the playoffs the year they show improvement. Sometimes it's small steps in the right direction. Sometimes it's moderate steps in the right direction But if you're in a tough division like the Raiders, still tough pathway to get to the playoffs. I'm not saying they won't make the playoffs, but what I'm telling you is just as you feel the Raiders are on the right path with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly and they put the foundation in place, make sure your expectations are level with what's going on around the league too, because as we say all the time, the Raiders aren't the only team improving. And sometimes it takes time to get to where you want to go, i.e. the playoffs and be a contender year in and year out. So the Raiders obviously should win more than 4 games this year.
Oh yeah.
How many more games will they win is the question. You and I both say 7. You're going to look over the schedule, but I'm saying the way the roster is constructed right now with the schedule before the injuries and all that stuff kicks in, I'm going 7 wins. You can talk me into 8.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great call. Appreciate it, Yandog. Now we're going. You ready, Mo? Get your sunscreen. We're going to the Bahamas. Here we go.
Oh.
Hey, Scott. This is David from the Bahamas. You know me well. I've given you many rants and DMs. Firstly, I'd like to start by telling you and Mo, if everyone come to the Bahamas on vacation, I live in an island called Eleuthera. I can set you up. I'm sure the winters here are nicer than Cincinnati and New York. So to get to the draft, first of all, I'm like Scott. I wanted Gentry all along. That's what I thought we would take all along. I just think these guys who are top tier running backs going all the way back to the days of O.J. Simpson. There's a reason these running backs go in the top 10. Usually they're head and shoulders above the rest of the backs in the draft, right? Again, going back to the days of O.J., Gale Sayers, Jim Brown, etc. So anyhow, I love that pick. I love Beck too. I think one thing people are forgetting about Beck, on top of him kind of being a hard-nosed receiver and he'll be a good intermediate possession guy, is he's an excellent blocker. And again, if you're looking at a lot of 2 tight end sets and power football and running with Gentry, like I think we will do, that's the perfect type of receiver out there. Then I love Porter. That's a classic length, long corner that Carroll loves. Richard Sherman-esque kind of thing. And then, the 2 offensive linemen taken late in the 3rd, I think one of them will be starting by the end of this year and definitely by next year. And then I love Thornton. I'm an old school Raider guy. I love the speed wide receiver, and he's got the size, of a Metcalf. He's very raw, obviously, but just tell him to run slant, goes, and post routes. And we don't need him to be like a star. We just need him to catch 20, 30 passes, 400 to 600 yards, and open everything up for Bowers and Myers and back underneath. And then just to finish off, I love the 2 quarterbacks. Of course, one will be converted to a wide receiver. And I agree with Mo. He's very similar, the kid from to kind of a mix. I think he's a mixture of Edelman and Taysom Hill. And he can kind of like do those shotgun runs and option plays like Taysom Hill, and then also be able to slot like Edelman. And people forget Edelman, his first 4 years was primarily a return man. It took him about 5 years to really become a slot receiver. So at the very least, this guy could probably return punts as well. Cam Miller obviously has the blessing of Brady. I know some people wanted a linebacker, but here's the deal, guys. Rome wasn't built in a year. We had tons of holes on this team. And I would say other than linebacker and maybe corner, most of those holes were filled in this draft. So I'm going to sign off and take care, guys.
All right. Silver and Black today, live in the Bahamas. I think that's got a nice ring to it, Mo. First of all, right?
He's giving us an invite, Scott.
He's giving us an invite. I'm like, hey, let's go. I mean, we'll do the show from down there, right?
If you see
on the
me
beach,
if you see me doing a show with a glass of lemonade with a little umbrella in it, you know where I'm at.
A little spiked lemonade. Oh, that would be funny. But David, great call there too, and all good points. I mean,
yeah.
And I think that he's right there on Vesh too. I understand what he's saying. He doesn't have to be a star, but I think he can be. The more and more I watch him, I think he can be one of those guys. And I'm not comparing him from a style perspective, although there's some parallels to a Puka Nacua or a Cooper Kupp type receiver. But that idea that you don't have to be a kid from Ohio State to Marvin Harrison Jr. to be a star receiver in the NFL, especially with the way the offenses are now. So I think Vesh he could very easily be a big star in this league, especially for all the reasons that David gave there.
I like the point he made about Dante Thornton. Like that Dante Thornton
Oh yeah.
is not doesn't have to be a high volume pass catcher. He was in at Tennessee, by the way.
Right.
But getting him in there, just not only being able to stretch the field, but the fact that opponents are going to have to respect his speed and his ability to go over the top, and that's going to open up things for Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and whoever else is on the field catching the football. Having that type of player on the field changes things for the defense and how they cover the Raiders. And I think if Geno Smith, who can throw the deep ball pretty well, is going to find Dante Thornton on occasion, but he's also going to have some open throws to other guys because Dante Thornton is on the field.
Yeah, no question about that. Good stuff, Ron. Appreciate it, man. We'll try to get down there. It would be awesome. I can imagine, especially like when it's week 17. Mo can do his Bleacher Report's Bahamas office.
You got a little tan.
That's
I
right.
got some melanin already, but
Yeah, you're a little ahead of me, but that's okay. I'll catch up. All right. Thanks, man. All right. Now we're going out to Ron in Virginia. Got a couple minutes left, so let's get Ron in here.
Hey, Scott, Mo. Hey, this is Ron. I'm calling from Virginia. It's been a while since I've called in. I guess you guys have had a show in a few weeks, right? I'm just calling in to talk about a little bit about the draft. Just want to get you guys' opinion. What do you think about it? I think they did a really good job on the draft, the Raiders, Spike Tech and Carroll. It seems like most of the pundits out there and reporters think that the Raiders had a good draft, and I tend to agree with them. But you always have the naysayers. People really wanted the Raiders to pick up Stan Shador, but it's obvious the Raiders are comfortable with the O'Connell as a backup because Shador wasn't guaranteed to come in and start anyway. He probably had to sit behind Geno Smith. That's why they brought in Geno Smith. But a lot of people don't seem to understand that. But as overall, I think they did a great job. But of course, you're always going to have what do you call them, the keyboard GMs who seem to think the Raiders. They talk about how the Raiders didn't draft a cover linebacker and this and that. But I think what people don't understand is that maybe there's players on this team that the Raiders see right now that can fill certain positions, right? And I look at it as this way. This is there may be guys like Amari Gaynor and other guys that they like, and certain players that they like on this team that they might want to hold on to, and they feel they can fill the positions. Overall, I think they did a great job. And what people have to understand is I think it's a long-term thing. It's not like an immediate fix. I think they're going to get better. We have to understand. I'm not saying they're going to go to the playoffs. I think they have a good chance, though. But like I said, people have to understand, too, the AFC West, everybody else in the other teams in the West, they got better, too. The Raiders are not the only one that got better. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the progress, the direction they're going into. I just want to be positive about it. Just tell me what you guys think about the draft overall. Thanks a lot. Go Raiders.
All right, there's Ron from Virginia. Mo, he sounds a lot like what you were saying earlier.
A lot of what I said earlier, the way I look at the draft is you want to have at least a couple of immediate contributors, and I think you have that in Ashton Gentry and Jack Vesh. And then I remember saying the Raiders have project players, and a lot of people took that in a negative way. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say it in the way that these project players the Raiders have tremendous upside. Our caller from the Bahamas just talked about Tommy Mellott, who will transition to wide receiver. There's so many things you can do with him. Dante Thornton, who has that top end speed and can give the Raiders what they thought they probably would have had out of Trey Tucker with more consistency, a deep ball target. And then you got guys on the defensive side of the ball, Tonka Hemingway, who can play up and down the line. He played mostly edge of South Carolina, but he's the size of, he can play, maybe he bulks up, plays defensive tackle. JJ Pegues, who can play both sides of the ball, two-way player. I joked about Travis Hunter not being the only two-way player known in this draft class. So there are a lot of what's behind door number 2, what's behind door number 3 type players in this draft class. And I'm interested to see how Chip Kelly does it because he's an innovative play caller. Patrick Graham has been there now, going on his 4th year. So There's a lot that these coordinators can do with the players they brought in. The upside, the ceiling is high, and training camp is going to be fun. Reading the reports and seeing where these guys are going to line up.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you for the calls as always. That's going to wrap up the caller segment. We got to get out of here. Mo, real quick before we go, let everybody know where they can find you this week and what's going on.
After going on a bit of a darkness retreat, be back on Bleacher Report on Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Topic to be determined. Over at Sports Knot, we'll talk more about training camp battles, some of the unsettled positions that the Rays are going to have to settle late spring into the summer. We're getting into the grind of getting down to the 50-man depth chart, and the road starts at OTAs.
There you go. All right, we're going to head out of here. Again, thanks to Brian Baldinger for being our guest here. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your audio, rate and review. We appreciate it very much. Until next week, everybody, take care. We'll see you then.